streaming, and I go to that, and oh, I get full screen. What happens to my stream? Hello, stream. Right. So yes, I want to make that smaller. And do that, and do that. Okay. So that gives me that full screen. Okay, so again, if we have a look at the topics that we had discussed covering, so what I assume all of you have kind of, oh yeah, I've got one of them on. So you're all using some form of version control, yes? Good, so we're covering that point. Coding styles. Have all of the groups decided coding styles, and are you using your coding styles? You hadn't decided that, but you are. So some of you are using coding styles. Now's actually kind of in a project because you're kind of looking at Easter. This is halfway through. You're having a break, reassessing how, like, are you successfully using coding styles? Like, are we sticking to what we said we would do, or have we started drifting? And there's two responses to drifting. Either use the big stick and hit people who are not following the rules, right? Or change the rules to make what you're now doing the appropriate way of doing things, right?
Still threaten menacingly with the stick.
Still threaten menacingly with the stick, but then change the rules to whatever you're currently doing is what is actually the right way of doing things. In Norway, you guys, and I'm going to be a wee bit critical, you guys tend to be more likely to accept rules than fight to change them. Alright, so my experience of Norwegians is that they're more likely to say, oh, that's the rule, we'll do it that way, rather than go, why is that the rule? Who made that rule? Can I go and talk to that person who made that rule and get them to change that rule? Because that rule makes no sense. So in New Zealand, you get a much more of that, of the complaining about the rules and then trying to change them. Here in Norway, you seem to be to more accept that, you know, well, it's the rule. Right? Yeah, where's the resistance? Where's the marching? Where's the occupying the central cantina building and refusing to let anyone in until your demands are met? I've not seen one student protest that's taken over any of our buildings. I've never come to work and been locked out because the students have taken over the building and refused to let the staff in. Like, where's your fight? So yeah, so no, Norwegians seem to kind of, you know, they're either black metal and they're burning churches, like, or everything's fine. It's rather dichotomous, but so now is a good time to look at coding styles and go, okay, we made those rules, should we change them? Should we update those rules to reflect more experience we now have with how this project works? Right, so that now's a good time to reflect on your coding standards. And it can be the case that you will change. Right? You start a project with ideas of how things are going to work and where you're going to put things, and then after a few months you go, wow, we didn't put anything where we said we were going to put anything. Either we spend a lot of time moving it back to the way it was there, or what is the closest sensible, sane, structured approach to what we now have. Right?
And where you're going to end up. Sometimes, because you know of the structure you know you're going to need at the end, you say, well, damn it, we're going to have to move things around where they should have been anyway. Okay. You're not just making changing your rules to match what you've done. You change them if it's not going to stop you from achieving what you had originally planned. Sometimes you do have to say, actually, those rules made sense, we've just been stupid.
Yeah. So sometimes you do have to accept that you've been stupid and just fix it.
But yeah, think about where your project's going to end up, and if changing the rules is going to cause you more problems than the short-term pain of fixing what you've done.
One of the other interesting things that you're at the moment, and this happens in projects regularly in the professional space, is you're coming up to a holiday. Right? And a holiday gives you an opportunity, because in a holiday you expect most people not to be working, which means you can take one person who says, right, I'm gonna fix everything and all the fuckers can leave my code alone. I'm just gonna refactor it all, don't touch anything because you're on holiday anyway, and when you come back I will tell you where everything now is. Because often it will take a few days to do this, right? And telling everybody else, don't touch any code for 4 days is kind of, well, how do I work, right? It's kind of can't do anything. And so you see this with the IT staff. They'll take the summer block and they'll update all the software, they'll update the versions of everything, and they'll test to see if the new versions will work together. So you take holiday periods to do like technology changes or refactoring or reorganizing. It is best to tell everybody you're doing this rather than have them go on holiday and then just take over all of their code. No?
Or change some stuff and then you go on holiday. That's even worse.
Yeah, and then you're supposed to stay. When they get back, you stay for a few days to tell them what happened rather than, right, it's Sunday, I'm off for a week. Where's everything? So you're at one of those holiday periods right now. So one of the things you can do is sacrifice one of your group members who doesn't feel like having an Easter holiday and say, right, you get 3 days after Easter where you get to, we'll buy you beer and you can go and get drunk for 3 days and not have to do any work if you fix all of this up over Easter, right? So you kind of trade off workplace environments. So yeah, so that this time is when you can do those sorts of things, right? And that often happens in companies. Like when you have a holiday, someone will do something that requires everybody else to be on holiday and not working, because it's an opportunity. We've done comparative languages. We talked a little bit about Haskell, and I gave you the Haskell thing, and you played with Haskell a little bit, some of you, and played with Lisp a little bit. You're also seen, we did the refactoring on Visual Code, so some of you haven't done any Visual Code before, saw Unreal's visual programming environment, which is a different language for doing things, so we've done some of that. Bug tracking and solving, we've talked a little bit about that. We talked about test cases, using profilers. We can probably talk some more about tracking down bugs. Jason and I are both, we both enjoy fixing bugs. It is something that is kind of like it's like a puzzle game, right? You're given a puzzle, something's not working, like you tinker with it, you investigate it until you find the solution. So we find that enjoyable. Commenting styles and coding styles. So commenting styles, you might also decide that during Easter is a reasonable time to not add any new features because no one else is around to give back and forth on new features, right? So you're kind of all blocked from code development. But you could do commenting, right? Just use the time to refresh your brain, and you come back and kind of make a few comments about your code when you've had a time away from it. So commenting styles, you can also look at those now and do some more commenting. We're starting to move towards the end of the semester towards deploying of applications, right? So actually the library work we've done fits in a little bit with deploying of applications, because with a library you can deploy your library code and then your executable are two parts of a deployment, right? So if you have a large library, you also need a way of packaging and deploying that either up on a server or an installer. How many of you are doing a standalone executable? Because so you guys are doing web-based stuff, but you're doing standalone executable. Have you used Visual Studio's installer wizard?
No, I have.
You have?
I've worked on a C# project in the summer break as an intern.
Right.
And I had to create with that system.
Yep. And the Visual Studio has, a wizard that's actually now reasonably good in the 15 and 17 version of Visual Studio. The installer wizard, where it just tells you like what do you want to call it and where does it put it, and you go through and give it all the instructions. What libraries will it need? What DLLs? So it goes through and does that. It's a wizard. You do it. It is something you should all do, is work out how you deploy what you're making, right? And it's very important to test it on clean systems, right? Systems that don't have a development platform on them, right? One of the standard problems that almost all students do when they're testing their deployment is they test it with other students in their class. And those other students already have Visual Studio installed and a whole dev platform installed and all the drivers installed, and so they try it and it works perfectly. And they go, well, it's great then. And then they try it on their mum's computer, and their mum happens not to have Visual Studio 17 installed and the runtime drivers for 17. Well, unless your mum is a programmer, and then she may well have all the things she needs because she's a programmer. But some of your mothers won't be programmers, and some of your fathers won't be programmers. And so they're probably going to need additional packaging, right? So test it, like, you know, send your elderly father, although maybe you've still got grandparents alive, they're even better because they're likely to have even older systems that are even less updated. You could build one nice test is to use like a VM, build a raw VM and just put it in a completely plain VM, right? Another test is one that's been actively being used. Those test different things. So the plain one tests that you're including everything you need to do. The one that's being used by other people for other things other than developing means you're not stamping on other existing packages, right? So you've kind of, there are two tests there. But yeah, so clean deployments are a really critical way of testing, right? And most students don't do that properly. We've done some integration in libraries, and we were just talking about that before, and we've started you guys on that process, and integrating your libraries and developing library modules. Most of you have had to use multiple libraries already, so those two to go together. Team collaboration and reflection on programming in teams. So at 4th year level, I'm teaching experts in teamwork, which is an NTNU-wide course on how do you work in a diverse team? How do you give and receive criticism? Right? So when we're doing code reviews, how do we tell people that their code is shit and make them feel that that's a good thing? Right? Or at least not such a bad thing that they'll still want to work with you. And also, how do you resolve potential problems in your groups? Right? So when you have conflicts, what does that look like? Are there body language issues? Are there cultural issues? Are there understanding issues? I remember Jason here, when we talk about agile methodology, and I agree with him, the key principle of agile is actually just getting you guys to communicate with each other, right? Getting developers to talk with each other about what's going on is kind of the most important bit of those agile processes. And agile just makes you do it more often than a waterfall, and so that's why it's better. It's not a secret, it's just better communication leads to fewer errors, right? And fewer misunderstandings. So in terms of team collaboration and reflecting on programming in teams, what we want to get you to get out of this course is also to start reflecting on, have you had any situations where you've had conflicts about how to do things, and how did you resolve those conflicts, and when did that resolution work well, and when did it not work well, or we just had to put it on the carpet and forget about it, or the group fell apart, right? Have any of you had group members leave during the semester? Not yet? Oh, good.
First semester, yeah.
Hmm?
First semester.
First semester.
Yeah, they were dropping out, so you know.
Yeah. Well, first semester of the game programming degree, we were generally knocking a few off pretty fast. Yes, thinning the herd. I think is the. I always wanted the university to only ever take the enrollment numbers after the end of first semester. So who shows up at the beginning of second semester is the number I'm interested in, not who shows up in first semester, because you know I can't get most of those passed. But yeah, so but working in teams. Have you guys had situations where you've had conflicts in your team? Yes, right. So part of being professional is managing conflict, right? You will disagree with people. You will have arguments. Various companies use various different ways of managing that. So I know some will use the Friday afternoon going out for a drink together. Not so common in Norway, quite common in the rest of the world, where you might actually go drinking with your work buddies. This is something that people do, is they have social interaction with the people they work with. In Norway, that seems far less common for you guys to go out drinking with workmates. Now, students, you're all students, so you probably do go at least some social activities, I would assume. But as a rule, Norwegians tend not to kind of treat work as a friendship zone. It's more of a professional zone, and you don't socialize, which is a problem when there's an argument, because then you have an argument and you don't have another channel to kind of resolve that in a different way, right? Because one way of resolving a problem is, if you've had a problem in this channel of communication, we're having this work problem. If we go and have a drink and talk about football, it may be that we'll then come at this problem from a different perspective and a different way. And then we can say, oh, actually, no, we are trying to achieve the same thing. I just didn't understand that that was your perspective, right? So sometimes taking yourself out of the situation and talking about it in a very different context with a different environment can really help you solve some of those conflicts. So for the rest of the course, we can look at what areas that you want to focus more on. I would like to have more code reviews from you guys, because you should have more code. You should be nearing kind of a block of code and be moving towards report writing. So now I hope that you're starting to decrease the number of features you're adding to things, and you're starting to look at more cleaning things up and polishing them and getting them a bit better, and then writing your documentation.
And when someone comes over to do a code review, when he asks you, okay, so what's wrong with this, you should already have an opinion about what's wrong with it. Because if you don't think that anything's wrong with it, you're in for trouble, because he will find things wrong with it. So do self-reflection. Look at the code and think, what bits am I least happy with?
And that's, yeah, that's, I look at my own code and go, I can look at my own code and say, oh, there's a bunch of stuff here I'm not happy with.
If you claim to have perfect code, you're setting yourself up for trouble.
Yeah. So now in this course, I think we can talk more about things like how you resolve conflicts and how you manage disagreements, and moving into the code reviews for you guys. So you guys, you said you might have some code you could show us and do a short code review, and you guys have a function, okay, that you'd like us to look at?
Yeah.
You guys have anything you'd like us to look at? Not at this stage, they say. No. Okay.
Well, or a data structure or a flow that you want to discuss.
I have a pretty terrible function you can watch.
A pretty terrible function that we can watch.
It's a REST function from Wednesday when we had a presentation on Thursday, and I just had to throw something to work, and it turned out working, but pretty terribly.
So yeah, no. So I think what we can do now is we can do we'll grab some code up. We'll do a bit of code review. We can also talk about how you solve disagreements, right? So I'll just give you, like, while we set up, I'll give you a couple of tricks that they use in the fourth year one, and a couple of examples of feedback. So one of the tools that we're using in the fourth year course is, two of the interesting ones are the 2+1 exercise, where you go around in your group and you give yourself permission, right? So this is part of the whole thing. It's okay, we're going to do a 2+1 exercise, which means I come up with 2 nice things to say about each individual in my group and 1 negative thing to say about each individual in the group. All right? Now, that means that if you've got any festering things that you've wanted to say but you've never found a way of saying them without seeming to be an asshole, right? Then you do the, oh great, it's a 2+1 time, I can say nice things about, you know, I love how enthusiastic you are about the project, could you please refrain from using 2-letter variable names, and I really like the general structure if the variable names were better. So, you know, I just picture variable, you know, but it means that everybody's given permission to say something that annoys them about other people in the group, right? And it's not like you're just bringing it up out of random thing, or like it's really pissing you off right at the time. Because also, if somebody does something that pisses you off, you're more likely to overstate the problem and to get aggressive while you're pissed off. Right? So it is far better to bring that up once it's passed and you're calm and you can clearly express how you feel about that problem. But you also need a trigger to make that happen, right? So a 2+1 exercise can be that trigger where you get to say the thing that annoys you about each individual. Also, you want to say nice things so that it doesn't feel like just a complete, everybody hates everybody session. Okay?
I like that you're not completely useless.
Yeah. You can't say, I like it when you leave. I hate it when you're here. And you've got a nice girlfriend. That would probably not be the right kind of bracketing of a 2+1. So yeah, but you should be able to work this out. A second version of that, so that requires some direct communication. It brings it very much of I feel this about you. Right? Another situation you can also try is the version of the 2+1 in a hat. And then what you do is everybody writes 2 good things about the group and 1 bad thing about the group. Throw it in the hat, shake it up, and then a person brings it out and reads each of the comments. And they then become kind of an anonymous comment from someone in the group. Right? And the rule is you don't try and work out who said it. You just take it as feedback about our group that we could then discuss. Right?
Is it a half semester retro?
I have it. This is kind of a half semester retro, but the bachelor thesis don't have a requirement for a half semester retro, a retrospective. So, but yeah. So, but no, these periods where you get to do some of that reflecting back with each other. This is a good time to do that. Also, again, you're about to go on holiday, so some of the things that will have pissed you off, if you go on holiday for 3 or 4 days, kind of go away and you come back feeling better anyway, right? And so some things will just go away. One of the nice things about talking about them before you go on holiday is that sometimes that can be kind of, right, I've got rid of that, I can go on holiday fresh, and maybe if it's something I need to think about, I can reflect on it when I come back. Okay, I don't have to see you tomorrow or the next day, so I've got space to process what you've said. Right? This can backfire if the person then goes away and kind of cycles on it and gets really, really, really angry and doesn't get a chance to talk to you and gets angrier and angrier and angrier and turns up and starts throwing chairs on the Monday morning. So, you've got to understand the type of people you're working with as to which version works. But think about potentially running one of these sessions where you give people permission to say things that annoy them. Because a bunch of you will be getting to the point where you're annoyed and probably bottling, and that might not be great, particularly for the rest of the project. So sometimes saying them in this I'm allowed to say it environment can help. And also say it when you're calm rather than when you're angry. Okay. Right, let's do some code review. So I'm not going to make you guys do a 2+1 right here. We do that for the master students, and we watch them while they do it, and then we comment on how uncomfortable they look. Because,
it's fun. Be honest.
Well, it's interesting to watch them criticize each other and compliment each other, because some of them are really bad at complimenting each other and really bad at taking a compliment. Right? When someone says to you, you're a really good programmer and I really appreciate all the work you do. Some of you know it's like kind of what do I say?
Well, it's just as well because you're terrible.
Yes. You can sometimes hear in a different say, "Why, thank you. Yes, I appreciate that you see how good I am." That seems like it's not the natural Norwegian response to someone telling you how wonderful you are. How often do people tell you how wonderful you are? Not often. Yeah. That's why some people have puppies. is because, you know, when you come home, they go, oh, you're home, you're home, you're home. Feels good because they're always happy. Right, so, code review. Who wants to go first? Do you guys? Yep. Okay, I'll just see if there's anybody online at all, because there is a stream. I have 5 watches! Yay! Live chat. Is there any chat? Do they have anything to say? People watching. Hi, people watching. Supposedly there are 5 of them. Oh, yes. I thought one disappeared, but no, they're still there. They're just not willing to talk. Okay, so, you know, you can actually, I think, anonymously watch YouTube, I think. You don't have to... Yeah, once you have the link, I think you can be anonymous as a watcher. So, what's up? So yeah, they could give me a 2+1, where they say 2 nice things about me and 1 thing they hate about me as a lecturer. Hello, Benjamin. Oh, that's... so yes. It's a different Benjamin, yes. It's Wendling. So, oh yeah, so they are present, at least in some way. We did, one of the exercises we did it actually using my curate system, where we had anonymous, you actually could just write in anonymous comments, and that can be good. It can also be a bit disturbing when people are completely anonymous, because sometimes they troll. So yeah, usually you don't have that problem within your group. Though if one of your people in your group is a troll, yes. Who's the troll in the group? Yeah. Wave. Okay. Right. So, code review. You're gonna now. So you want to do a. Yeah. We can probably plug you in over there if that's easier, or we can plug you in here. Yeah. Right, HDMI. And I will just go to these guys and take them and make it go full screen. Whack, and that's that. Whee. It's trying to. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Should I zoom in?
Zooming in a little bit will help, because even the people in the room are having trouble seeing things.
So I already refactored some of the local variables in this function because they made no sense. It's better? Okay. This is a function from a C++ program intended to generate mock data for some data structures which we have. And on Wednesday night they asked me to change the data structure, so instead of printing 2 lists, 2 separate files, they wanted to combine the data structure of the one list into the first list in a JSON structure. The main basically does this call with the first list and the second list, and the file logic or writing logic is handled in this function, which is the piece of code I wanted to show. Because to me this was an iterator nightmare to have consistencies, because you have to take the one list and sort out specific elements corresponding to the first list. And it became a function where you separate the I/O operations, and that's nice, but this function alone should be like 5 functions. Because in the first loop you iterate all of the devices in the first list, and then in that loop you have a separate loop to do the sorting, and that should be a separate function in its own to fetch the events corresponding to a unit or device. And then you have the writing and then you also have a check to check if the JSON array is closed or not. So depending on if it was the last element in a list, you should either append a curly bracket or a curly bracket and a square bracket, and that should be our own function.
It could be its own function.
And the one thing I had butted with in this function is the way iterators works in C++17, and how the whole vectors and lists and maps actually work, because we had C++ in the first year and half the second year, and then I never wrote a line of C++ in 1.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were also taught C++ 99 syntax.
Yes.
97 syntax.
Yeah.
So jumping from 97 syntax and then skipping 1.5 years and then writing C++ 17 was a bit tedious.
So C++17 is very Java-like, and is quite a long way from C++ 98 or 97. It's they're almost different languages, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 11 was a different language.
I mean, it's changed only a little since then, but C++ 11 completely changed.
Yeah, and basically the developers, so Sralfa was saying, there are only a handful of developers in the world who actually need to go into all the very low level C++ stuff. Everyone else should be doing using standard template library and using the kind of top level features rather than digging in and trying to do low level craziness, right? Only occasionally do you need to do that. Most people don't need to touch that low level stuff. And so and moving to using autos for things and using ranged fors and using iterators properly and stuff, and using memory properly, and all of this sort of change is something that is very different to C++. In fact, there's even a different mentality, right? So the way you think about what you're doing, you're kind of moving towards functional programming, where you kind of more describe what needs to be done rather than how to do it. Right? So rather than here, as you see with this your for loop there with the you've got the device's iterator. The iterator is not at the end. Increment the iterator, right? So that's can you do that as a ranged for on that iterator, and actually not have to tell it to increment the iterator to step through it? Is there a ranged for version of that?
I don't know. C-line usually notify if you could use a range instead.
Right. Okay. So C-line lets you know that, because there's this. So the general principle is can you move away from telling it to do a plus plus and step through it? Can you just tell it to here's my object, do everything to this object?
The other thing scary with iterators is that the iterator could modify the object itself.
Yes.
So it's kind of an unsafe way to actually handle a list, because with an iterator you have the power to do anything and basically wreck your whole structure.
Yes.
Compared to like int I and iterate with that.
Yeah.
Or in an array, that is.
Yeah. So you've got so the local devices is so you've got the auto there, which is nice because you say you don't have to tell it that it's an iterator. You just say, well, at the begin. Though that's a pointer into the it's an iterator that's been initialized as the iterator at the beginning. So those are autos. So so it'd be standard list iterator. So that's why we use and then you'd have to tell it what it was, and then that it's a pointer to that thing. I think it's in there. Yeah, something like that. Maybe not a pointer to it. Maybe it's just.
It's the same as the function, right?
Yeah.
And then it tells you use auto.
Yeah. Okay. So so either you could write all of that stuff, or back, go back to look. Yeah. we know which we prefer. And so yeah, so using the autos, using auto iterators are much nicer. So
now you can use auto for the return type of a function. Don't.
yeah.
When someone looks at the prototype, they have to be able to understand what this thing does. So what's going in and what's coming out. Declare the types.
Yeah, and you can't declare an auto with an initialized data type. So the auto has to know what it is before runtime.
Yeah.
But if you have an auto as the return type and it returns something at the bottom of your function, that'll compile.
Yeah.
But someone looking at the code can't just scan the prototype of the function and know what it does. It's legal, but it gets in the way of people using your code.
It's messy. Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's a nice succinct way of creating an iterator. And that iterates through those local devices, which comes in from devices, which is a list of devices. So yes, and then you create a second list, which is the list you're putting things into.
Yeah, it's the device-specific events.
Yeah, so
where you
it's an
basically
event list.
sort them out into another list.
Right. We'd usually call that filtering rather than sorting. So because you were saying sorting, and that looks more like filtering.
It is filtering in a way that it basically creates a sub-list of that list.
Yes. Right. So this may sound pedantic, but the way in which we use words, right? So when in in English we'll say, "Oh, I'll sort that out later," which would mean I will deal with it later. Right, rather than I will find a pure ordering over the issue you've given me and put the first part of it in the start and then give a proper structure to it and put the last bit at the end. Right? Unfortunately, we're programmers, and so when I say sort something and I'm looking at code, I assume you mean like a quick sort that orders from least to most of something, right? And so we would prefer you to use the word filter. So filtering means I'm taking some things and putting them, like I'm putting them in left or right. Usually filtering is removing a bunch of things. Yeah, so filter would generally produce a subset. Right? Sort would produce an order over the thing. Right? Filtering, sorting, yeah. But so filtering out and here because you've got an if statement that says only add it if it matches the thing, that would be a filter. And so that's again an iterator that steps through all the device IDs and does a get name and then device specific insert. You're applying a function to a list. If we're doing this as a Haskell thing, you could do it in a bit cleaner way, but in a functional way. But yeah, that's a perfectly
This is
reasonable.
a function within a function, in my opinion.
Yeah. You could have it as a detect that there's this type and add it to a list.
It could be a template function.
You could create a template function that would take in things and say, right, produce a sublist that matches this, right? So, and there are some. Is it match? There is an iterator function that does that. That you can give it an iteratable type and a comparison function, and then say filter. Is there an iterator filter function? So C++, see if there is, yes, filter on iterator, or on what's the type? It's a structure type. No, it's the iteratable types are sets or lists. Well, list is an iteratable. So is there a filter operation? So search for filter. Is it searching?
It is.
Filter. String, how to filter, decrypt filter, remove if, list, remove if. That would edit the list. Remove if would be destructive, filter would be remove if. is nan, is punct, count if. Okay, make a unique find if. So what does find if do? Is that returns a full list of all the ones that were found, which contains the elements between first and last, including elements pointed to first and last. Okay. So yeah, so for some of these things, you might be able to find that appears to produce a range from the first one you find for some number, so first and last. So vector iterator find if begin end is odd. Now that actually look. So find if looks like you pass as an evaluating function and is odd, and then it will go through the list from the beginning to the end and return you a list of all the things that match that. Right? So the find if standard library feature is what you'd then go into your code and replace. That code is doing a find if. Yeah, right?
Basically does.
And so what a kind of nicer way of writing that would be to say so you're getting a device specific list out.
Yeah.
So that we've got let's see if we can do this. So the dice so standard list elements foo equals standard list find if. It's under lists rather than it's under the iterator tool. Right. Right. So I need. Yes, I can. I need to go and get to my children and rush back, but I can leave you with Jason here. And have you found the find if?
Yeah.
It is there?
Yeah.
Okay. So you then need to, if you go back in your code, and look at that in the browser, you need to give the find if has the iterator, first, the iterator first, and the unary predicate. Right? So basically you'd put in the begin, the end, and the predicate to compare.
I'm running low on battery.
Okay. Right. So we'll take a break. So Jason might come with a walk here. I'll be back in 15 minutes, and I will